Welcome back to 7th Grade Mustache. On today's episode, we'll be speaking about NPC life. People that are incapable of internal dialogue or internal monologue. Internal speech forms during early childhood. External speech occurs first before one can become aware of the idea of inner speech. So when you're beginning to learn your first words, you're listening to other people speaking. You're listening to your parent speaking words to you, and then you begin repeating those words back. Babies, they choose their first word. That's your first conscious decision, is the word that you speak to your parent. People always make a big deal about a child's first words. Those are actually important because it kind of sets the neural network for the rest of that person's life. But once you acquire your language skills, you start to engage in more of this internal dialogue.
Look, you were saying that internal speech comes second, which I'm disagreeing. Don't know if I agree or disagree, but I think internal speech may come first, because you got to remember, when you're an infant, you're operating at, they say, genius levels. So you're literally analyzing things. You may have developed your own type of speech, and then you take on the speech of others. You know, the speech you may have created on your own may be more efficient, may be more intuitive. And so, but then all of a sudden you are around these adults and they're speaking a different way. So you're like, okay, let me take on what the natives are doing. But the idea that you learn how to talk outwards before you learn how to talk inwards, I don't know if that's the case. Like I said, I'm saying that's not meant to argue. That's just a counterpoint.
A good example of how this might occur for a child is any kind of imaginary play when they imagine there's another friend that they're talking to. Some people may engage their inner monologue more frequently than others, while some may think in more complete verbose sentences as opposed to fragmented thoughts and ideas. So you see little kids all the time talking to themselves. They're talking to themselves. There's nobody for them to play with, so they're having this internal dialogue with either themselves or somebody that is real to them.
We don't see. Mm-hmm. Yeah, we don't see. Yeah,
now see, and then that's not to negate the spirit realm, but sometimes that child may have a spirit companion, or
could be an ancestor.
It could be an ancestor that's having a conversation with this child, and because we're so caught up with this whole meat suit life, we were taught to not think in that way.
Look, you got really deep on me the other day when you brought up the whole aphantasia, where you were like, look, you know, some people don't experience this, some people don't experience that. Go ahead and jump off the deep end of the pool, because I got a story for you, because that's how this whole shit started. So you have brought up some very important things when it comes to the aphantasia and the consciousness that reside in your head.
Yes. I want to put this out here for those who are doubting. If you're confused about conscious thought and what it is, here is some proof. 1, talking to yourself out loud or talking to yourself in your head. 2, hearing a voice in your head while reading, complete with tone and affect.
What you're talking about when you hear James Earl Jones in your head because you're looking at Darth Vader.
Or the Bible.
Yeah, that matters. That's a conscious. It's so profound.
But see, in school, how many times have you done that? Like, you're reading something and you might be saying any breath like, what the fuck? This is crazy. You're analyzing it while you're reading it, but you're just doing that out loud.
And the thing is that we're so influenced by certain voice actors or certain things that we actually hear in our head, and you're like, oh shit, titty twister. You know, you just imagine that voice dictating it to you, and I don't know what you call it. Conditioning. You're conditioned.
I don't agree, because I'm not conditioned that way, because me is music. I hear music for a scene. So
no. That goes back to Empire Strikes Back.
Yes.
We talked about how,
I will score a scene that's going on with music.
Look, I have a soundtrack in my head for many things. It's what it is.
So then, 3, rehearsing conversations or presentations in your head. Now, people do that. People think about the way a conversation is going to go. Dude, listen, if you ever played checkers or you play chess, you know there's moves. And so that when it comes to considering a conversation with a person that may be apprehensive to an idea that you're going to present to them, you may visualize the way that conversation is going to go and what that person might say. If you're that kind of person, if you're super OCD about it. If not, you just like, you think about it for a second and you go right into it. 4, having conversations with yourself in your head. Okay, here's a sidebar. Because we've entered the age of MK Ultra 2.0, there is a lot of V2K voice to skull technology being used that is beaming thoughts into people's heads. And
you got everything from social media to television to biblical to all the way to actual technology that can send words into your brain. And so, how do you separate the thoughts? How do you realize what's yours and what's somebody else's?
Because you have your base code of ethics, you have your base Budo mind, the martial mind. And this is another thing why the martial mind is so important. Martial arts are fantastic at developing a fundamental base camp for your consciousness. It creates a starting point, a springboard that you take off from, and you're saying, this is my foundation. This is it.
Okay, the reason, this sounds so bad. The reason it's so important that you have two parents, and sometimes people, I don't want to just like you, but women are so obsessed with the diagnosis that they're not worried about how to fix it. It's come out now that children that have one parent and it's the father tend to stay out of prison. Girls don't get pregnant. It's because there's a different vibe. Women nowadays will take a kid to a specialist, get them analyzed, and then, my child has low self-esteem. my child, in my case, I have ADHD. It was back in the day.
Because women are in their head so much, and they're having so much internal dialogue all the time. They have assassinated you 50,000 times, and you don't even know it.
But hold it. Let's talk about how this is a practical issue. The reason women are divine, sometimes I'll say they're closer to God, because they think the concept that conceptualizing something, they think that when I came up with it, it exists. No, women are magnetic, and they're godly, so they invent this shit in their mind, but they don't bring it into the physical world. The man who is, electricity, or how
the man is like, hand me that wrench over there. Get that bag of screws and the hammer and the drill gun, and we're going to make this right now.
And like I said, so we're talking about the voices in your head or whatnot, but I'm simply saying that my brother just told you a woman can have 19 conversations with herself, but then she hasn't physically done anything, and she could be exhausted from that. Now, you don't even have time to fix this kid that you just got diagnosed. Like I said, fortunately enough, I grew up with an asshole for a mother. And so once I got diagnosed, that just meant we had to work harder to make sure that I didn't have these problems. But most women, since we have a lot of single parent women, and the society told you that it's better for the kid to go with the mom, whether that's debatable. But if you have that parent who gets you diagnosed but doesn't do anything to fix it, instead she feels sorry for you because, my child has low self-esteem. Well, then fix it. Put that nigga in martial arts. Fix it. Put that little girl in cheerleading. Put that little boy in some kind of physical activity.
What separates men from women in this regard is that when it comes to the healing, the fixing the problem, men are more about doing, about an action. And so therefore, when I had lost somebody and I was depressed and I didn't know I was depressed, and Duct Tape came to see me. He was like, man, you look like shit. And we didn't talk about it anymore past that. But what happened is what we did. We went out and we cured it by having fun, by the doing, because life is in the doing.
That's complicated. That's profound. Look, how about this? You dated a few women in your time. I'm not gonna throw no numbers out there. You know Will Chamberlain, but you know what I'm saying?
Quite a few ladies.
Yeah, you're not no Nick Van Exel either. You up there, my nigga. So one of the things that you run into when you're dating women is the car situation. A woman will have a car and brakes are bad. Brakes are grinding. All this stuff is wrong. What does she do? She turns the music up and keeps it moving. And you ask me, so oh yeah, I know what's wrong. I need this. I'm like, so what?
But hold up, but here's the other thing is that but you ain't supposed to have that shit. She can have a claptrap on wheels, but you are not allowed to have this shit.
City car as a man. Oh, damn, that's fucked up. Man, you get into you're getting into relations. I was just trying to get to the fact that women will know the problem and not fix it. Like, oh yeah, it's a transmission. Oh yeah, it's this, and she'll keep driving it until it's dead. Instead of like,
somebody would get in the car and then be like, "Man, your brakes are loud." Really? Turn the radio up. Can't hear it now, can you?
Yeah. I fixed it. But in the details that I'm referring to is the fact that, now don't get me wrong, society's fucked up when it comes to women in cars. Let's not pretend like men have set up this, did not set it up to where women are dependent on men or anybody. Your ignorance is the tool. Now, I sell cars on the side. I see more girls driving sticks than I see boys. So you have a lot of ignorant men now, but that goes back to who raised them. They were raised by women. And so, sometimes that's an issue. But the point I'm trying to make is that just because there's a problem there, you shouldn't. Women are concerned how they feel about the problem, and that's an issue onto itself. Once you identify the problem, you should be trying to identify the solution to move us to the next realm.
Dude,
or the
real quick,
plateau.
I gotta say this shit. I saw this AAA commercial the other day.
It's already funny,
and it was like, we can change your tire for you. And there's this dude with his woman standing on the side of the road, and this big ass dude with these big, huge Popeye forearms shows up to fucking change the tire. I just shook my fucking head like,
No, remember she's the one who called him through the app while they were sitting there. So that's emasculating as fuck. I gotta call another man. Look, I just saw this shit on Facebook. A man calling a roadside service to change a tire is awful zesty, and I'm like, they're calling you gay to your face, and you don't even feel bad about it. Like, so now gender roles, which, like I said, sometimes there are bad gender roles, but there are some very important ones that somebody needs to know how to change a tire. Somebody needs to know how to take care of this shit. And that's what we're getting to when we talk about diagnosis and what the issues are. Women, like I said, they're very divine, so they can just think of something, and they think that since I had the idea, that's enough. That I'm like, yeah, that tells you that you're not dealing in the physical form, the ethereal form. You're not dealing with what's tangible. Men, I got an idea. What do I need? I need tools. I need money. I need gas. I need, and we start working on fixing it. And I think that's a big deal when it comes to this whole thing, because like I said, there are fucking surveys now. It was a white woman was talking about the numbers are in. It is told that a child that has a single mother, they're like 37% or 64% more likely to go to jail. Some crazy number. But kids with both parents, that goes down to like maybe 10%. But then if it's just a single parent who's a father, it's 10%. So they said you have the same results as if you have a father or if you have a mother and father. But you're not told that. We're told this whole narrative of absentee fathers and this, that, and other. And so that's where I'm bringing up how the media portrays stuff and how they can send that idea into your head. And we're speaking of voices in your head. And like when you're told enough that these men are not good fathers, you hear it over and over. And sometimes then you start reciting that shit. Like, oh, black men aren't good fathers. Nigga, fuck that. Like, I had a shitty dad. You didn't. And so it's just how it works. And sometimes the question is, some people have a shitty dad that's there. They drive you crazy. They're just as immature as the children. That kind of shit. So I don't know. I don't know if I benefited or if I was at a disadvantage from my father not being there. But my mom told me, like, look, when you put this on the paper, you tell them that you're at a disadvantage because you got one parent. Because we got one income. That's it. But if my father had been there, would I have been better off? I don't fucking know. So, but that's where these ideas are. When you talk about people actually sending ideas and thoughts and words into your brain, and sometimes it's from watching media, and other times it's probably more direct. You're probably walking around and they hit you with that satellite shit. They send it in there like, turn left. Why did I turn left? That shit is real. So you got to be able to disseminate the difference between your own consciousness and other things. You know this. I was trying to wait till you got a little bit deeper in the conversation, but we just talked about a motherfucker telling me, as I explained to him, I said, look, You must understand where the consciousness begins and the consciousness ends. He's like, what do you mean? I said, so the voice in your head, are you the voice in your head or are you the person listening? And the motherfucker got pissed at me. He said, I said, yeah, you don't realize the person listening is your actual consciousness.
Mm-hmm.
That's who you are. And if you don't understand that, then it's easy for you to be manipulated. And he said, well, the voice in your head is God. I said, ain't we kind of full of ourselves? So you mean to tell me God talks directly to you? Because I'm not saying that usually the only way I get God to talk to me is when I meditate. When I sit here and clear my mind and in fast and other shit, and then I gotta go to a different state to when I start hearing from God. But you, on the other hand, so you just walk around with God in your head. No, you must understand that those voices that are in your head are not always. They can be anything from demons to commercials. They could be social media to your fucking ex-wife still residing, renting a space out in your head. So you must understand that the voice in your head ain't the consciousness. You are listening to those voices. That's the consciousness. And once you realize that the person taking in the information is the consciousness, then you're able to make complete decisions without the influence of others, without that voice. And so, like, when I told him the voice wasn't God, he got mad at me. I'm like, nigga, I don't know what's going on in your head, but I'm just trying to tell you, your consciousness is the one listening, the one observing. And once you understand that, then you're able to separate yourself from the bullshit. And then you're able to make a clear decision and be responsible for that decision.
In 1880, British man named Francis Galton came up with the term aphantasia, aphantasia. And he described it as a person with symptoms that can be described as lacking the ability to create mental imagery, lacking the ability to create a conversation in one's own mind, or mind blindness is what it's often called. And this mind blind is they're saying it's a small percentage of the population. But it leads me to really think about that, okay, what does this come from? Is this a genetic abnormality or mutation? What does this come from? Conscious thought is not abnormal. One's inner monologue can also be the source for better critical thinking and increased creativity. Upon learning about the segment of the Earth's population that does not experience conscious thought, I consider the fact that the inner dialogue is directly connected to the functions of the third eye and psychokinetic ability. Visualization is a silent inner dialogue. There are actually people that cannot have internal dialogue and they can't visualize anything. The lack of such faculties may seem like a handicap, but consider that the disposition is what some of the most powerful people share. People that are critical of the low bar quality of the most expensive Hollywood films. And Hollywood continues to remake the same movies over and over because the top decision makers are completely dead inside automatons. It then creates a culture to shield itself from exposure.
We see in the music industry, the motherfuckers who are in charge have no ability to discern what's good music.
And there'll be like a trend and they'll just run it into the ground.
The ground. Or they have an agenda, which, again, drill music. We're going back to gangster rap, when we talk about that meeting in the late 90s, or excuse me, early 90s, pardon me, about the prison industrial complex. How do we fill these prisons that we just built? So they'll grab an agenda and beat it into the ground. But when you sit here and introduce somebody to one of these music guys, like, hey, this is Little Richard, whatever. And you hear him say, like, I passed on this one. Or you hear old boy at Def Jam say he passed on Alicia Keys. Like, look, you understand, she wasn't who she is now. I get some of that, but some of it is because these people they're tone deaf. They're literally tone deaf. They can't hear. The same thing when it comes to movies. They don't know what a good movie is. And why do you think it blew their mind when Black Panther did so well? Because they didn't think that, they thought that would be the least grossing Disney movie. It was at the time, it was one of the best grossing, because I'm like, for the record, me and you've been waiting for Black Panther since at least 92. But that's a whole other story. But what do you do when the people in charge are the ones that are tone deaf? They can't hear, or these are the ones that are only obsessed with physical and money. So if you if you realize what happened, you have these evil aristocracies, these evil families that are blue bloods, and they get into it and they come into cahoots with the banking industry. So that's how this shit happens, where money is supreme. That's done on purpose because these people know that based on reality, if one of these elites or one of these banking cats got into a physical altercation with one of these working cats, the working cat's going to win. So what do? You create a society where your physical skills and your physical attributes, your spiritual attributes, your spirituality, and your heart are minimal, but the people who care about money and establishment and having big buildings and fast cars, they're the more important ones. That's how they skew this shit, and they get away from what really matters. You started out this conversation by saying how important the martial mind is, how important martial arts are to give you a base of right and wrong and how to achieve and reach different goals and shit like that. It's very important to have those things, but instead they corrupt your children early on with these images and these desires. And I'm going through this shit with my nephew right now. Like he's obsessed with power and powerful people, and I'm like, yeah, but that nigga couldn't beat you in a fight. You know what I'm saying? Like your mom put you in taekwondo when you were a kid. You are physically superior to many of these people.
Because he lacks self-awareness. Because
he doesn't understand how powerful he truly is.
He is duped into thinking that they have something that he does not have innately.
Elon Musk is not some kind of genius. And me and you laugh about it. I'm like, that nigga's on the spectrum. It's the same thing with Zuckerberg. When them motherfuckers talk, we made fun of those niggas in class. Those are the Jamie Stephensons. I'm like, what the hell? I'm like, dude, but this motherfucker runs a business. And again, I had explained to my nephew, I said, those guys are PayPal mafia. Well, what's that? I said, there were like 7 or 8 friends that started PayPal. And when PayPal got bought out, these motherfuckers made a shitload of money. And they took that 200, 300 million they got and invested it in different shit. Elon Musk bought Tesla. He did not invent Tesla. It was 2 dudes, Mark and some other, I can't think their names, please forgive me, that were trying to do Tesla. Elon is just good at fucking marketing. And another thing that I brought this up to you off the air, I found this old video of Elon Musk talking about online banking like maybe 17, 18 years ago. He was still a dork back then. He's a dork now, but he talks about, he wanted to call it X. And so then all of a sudden he buys Twitter and changes the name to X. I'm like, look, y'all need to pay attention. He's going for banking. This X thing, he's trying to do a one-stop shop for banking, and he already has half of America, probably half the world's information from purchasing Twitter. You know, now all of a sudden, if he makes that part of your credit score or some weird shit, don't be surprised if that's where he's going. But back to what I was saying is that people give this guy credit, like he just. I think if you listen to what he says, he just comes up with a bunch of ideas, but he doesn't know if they're good ideas. My wife used to have this producer, and this motherfucker, she was like, hey, give me some beats, and he would bring like 50, 60 beats. And he would give them to her, and my wife would pick out beats. And so that tells you right there, he can come up with the ideas, but he doesn't know what quality is. He doesn't know what people want to hear. He's off in his basement jerking off, making beats. He doesn't know what's good music. And she would pick these different beats and write songs to him. He's like, oh, I didn't even like that one. Yeah. That's what you're dealing with when you're dealing with this Elon Musk kind of guy. He comes up with all these different ideas, but he doesn't know what's good, doesn't know what's plausible, doesn't know what real people need. He just knows that what's going to make him money. So these people are dead inside, and you gotta recognize that shit. Like this shit.
And
you're
those
talking
people
about,
control what you see and hear.
Oh my God,
That's
come on.
the problem. So then when back on July 5th of this year, 2023, when this woman points out a passenger on the airplane that she says is not real, everybody wants to dismiss it as she is having a mental meltdown. You did not see one photograph of this person. Why are images of this person being suppressed?
I found it. I found it.
Why did you have to dig so hard for this though? Because it's suppressed. Because it's suppressed. Now here's the thing. They are protecting people like this because it will expose all of them. Now weeks later, that same woman was coerced into apologizing when she didn't have to the entire world on social media. because the same woman wants to continue to thrive in that world
Her job, yes,
controlled by
yes.
reptilian brain psychopaths.
Look, when you see the dude, he's a little bit cross-eyed, but they have to explain everything to him, and you're assuming it's because there's some kind of language barrier. But there's some things there's some concepts. They said, yeah, she assaulted you, because he says she pushed her or hit him when she was trying to get away. He said, well, do you want to press charges? He said, why would I? What's that? He didn't know what press charges was. He didn't know what the word for assault meant. He said, fight you. He said, she never fought me. And so you're like, okay, there's some kind of language barrier. And I can't tell you what race he is, and the shit is so weird because he didn't understand shit. I'm gonna say it like this: if you're telling me that this woman was wrong, I can wholeheartedly tell you I don't know if she was wrong or not, because this motherfucker had a big disconnect between language
What I
and
want
what
to
it meant.
see is some internet sleuth get photos of this guy in the airport, in line, boarding the plane. Did this motherfucker board the plane by himself, or was he escorted to the gate
Dude,
by somebody that his handler made sure he got on and
he
sat the
got
fuck down, because this person can barely function because they're not fucking real and they were made 4 days ago in a laboratory
in a
in a
lab
deep
someplace.
underground military base in Dulce, New Mexico.
Look. Here, okay, here's where here's where the doubt. Okay, if that's the case, why don't they just stick with a military plane or drive them or something else? But
It's
what
all
if
a
this is a
test.
test?
You got to make
What,
sure
what,
that
what
this
if this is a
prototype
test run?
works.
Yeah, it's a test run. Look, we keep seeing these stars and actors that they keep telling you, hey, Kanye says they clone me, blah blah blah. You like you dismiss them, but then you see Jamie Foxx and he's 2 inches shorter and he's lighter. Like what the fuck just happened? You, I don't know what their capabilities are. Okay, but the idea that they're not there, or the thing that me and you talked about off the air, we're talking about people right now that barely have a soul. But I know one thing: if you create a bunch of clones, they ain't gonna have souls. And do you want to deal with people without souls? Because you see what happens when people are in charge that don't have souls, that don't have consequences, that don't care what happens to their fellow man or woman. They don't give a fuck. All of a sudden, people are more worried about the struggle than the destination. You keep equating sexual rights, LBGTY, to that of black people. Like, hey, yeah, we were oppressed. You weren't slaves because you were gay. In fact, homosexuality was forced on many slaves. This shit is a problem. And you sit here and you want to discuss what your kids. My kid, why do you want to have my kids come in contact with this information way too soon? I'm telling you, back off, because what you're doing is you're creating followers. You're creating people that, homosexuality ain't no big deal. Then they touch on the motherfucker. That's what as men, that's what we've been complaining about for years. Like, hey, I don't want these gay dudes around my son. I don't want these gay women around my daughter, because the motherfuckers might see them as prey. And you don't want to understand that shit. Men have set up a society where
But on the
right now,
flip side of that, the straight version of the harassment is these gymnastics instructors like
oh my
Larry
God,
Nasser that were preying on
yes,
these little girls.
for years. Oh, but you see the same thing in the Catholic Church. You saw the same thing up there at Penn State with Sandusky. Motherfucker was raping little boys and shit for years. They would go to football camps and all. And he was supposed to be the next football coach behind the Penn State coach, the one that had been there for so many years. The people knew, like, hey, nah, this
Paterno,
motherfucker.
Joe Paterno.
Joe Paterno, very good. I couldn't think of the name. And so Sandusky was supposed to take Paterno's place, and they said, hell no. All the insiders knew. But the people, I was like, yeah, this guy's a great guy. He runs football camps. That's because he's a fucking predator. So you have people that will literally set up a whole society or set up a whole system for them to acquire victims. And you see it in the banking industry, you see it in the athletic industry, you see it in all these different. Hey, right now the big thing is sex trafficking. These people are setting up whole. So these people are sick. They don't have the inner monologue. They don't have that voice telling them that they're doing something wrong. They don't have a regular conscience. All they have is their desire. They are their desire, and that's some sick shit.
But
So
so
we're
what's
kind of warning
crazy
people.
about this though, man, is when people talk about NPCs, non-player characters.
Mm,
And that term comes from
in
video
gaming, of
games.
course, of course.
Because you'll play a game And it's a game that requires you to move about through a landscape, depending whether it's side-scrolling or top-down or 3D, it doesn't matter. But you're moving through a landscape and you have tasks and decisions you have to make. And you come across people that may have information for you, or excuse me, you come across characters that may have information for you, or they may have, they don't do anything. And you just see them and they'll just spin around in the game like a dog chasing its tail, doing nothing, right?
See, that's back when they had the bad, virtual reality and the bad AI.
No,
And all
it
this other
goes
shit.
back to 8-bit games, because even on Nintendo, like a game like Gunsmoke, you'll have characters, you're walking through a town, you're shooting up this and that, and then like some characters, they're not even dangerous. They're not there to harm you. They're just window dressing.
They're there to move the story a little bit.
Mm-hmm. So then you consider, if there is a real world, IRL, in real life equivalent of that, it's these people who do not have the ability to have visual aid in their mind. They don't have internal dialogue and they can't visualize anything. Now, it doesn't make them a bad person, but if
They're
that
just
person
humans.
then ascends through power, through nepotism, relationships, here, give my nephew a job. And
Secret society.
this person is failing upward, like we talked about many shows ago. And this person is failing all the way to the top because they were born with a silver spoon in their mouth. Now, but check this
That's
out.
deep.
And then
That's
you
deep
hear
motivation
about
stuff.
royalty,
Yep.
inbred royalty that are born, with all these mutations. Okay, then perhaps some of these people that are royalty are actually a step away from being an NPC. They have aphantasia, or they can't have an internal dialogue. And so then what we're not talking about is what is the pivot from that. If that's your handicap, then do you lean into being a sociopath?
I'm going there. So if what made you successful is your sociopathness, or what made you successful is not your genetics, as in good genetics, your genetics as who you're related to or who you knew. So your loyalty is not to the people that you govern. Your loyalty is to who made you successful. So now it's like I have a disconnect. I can't relate to these people. I'm a sociopath. All I know is about my base desires and what I want. But the issue is when you're made to be successful based on anything other than your own merit, your loyalty is not going to be to anybody other than the people that made you successful. So if it's a secret society, it's Mason. If it's the royal family because you're royal. If it's because you say that somebody recognized you and you were basically cutting off heads, and they elevated you. So now you're being elevated for your negative behavior. Even when you look at the McVeigh, if you look at what made Tim McVeigh wake up, he said, "Yeah, when I was a sniper, I shot like two or three people in a row. They were standing in line, and he said that was the first time I was ever given any kind of recognition." So now, what's the next thing he does? He decides to blow up a building with a bunch of people in it because he wanted recognition. When you are rewarded for bad behavior, people will continue to do bad behavior. They're not gonna, especially if you don't have the inner monologue, especially if you don't have the ability to discern what voices are in your head. You're going to damn sure go in that direction of, I'll hurt people because it'll make me famous. I'll hurt people because it makes me stronger. I'll hurt people because it gets me something. And like I said, if you're one of these royal family or one of these bloodlines, one of these Rothschilds, et cetera, then yeah, you've been rewarded for just being present, not for being good or having redeeming traits.
So within royal families, you see these genetic mutations, and it's from inbreeding. Inbreeding only works up to a certain point in the plant kingdom. It's not suggested for the animal kingdom or mammals. I was once working on a film. I was a cinematographer on this horror film, and we were shooting at this house in the mountains of Georgia. No, we were in Tennessee. We were way up in Tennessee somewhere. And this guy had these dogs, all these dogs at this house. And I remember one of the crew members walked up and he said, these dogs are inbred, man. Look at them. And I'm like, what? What are you talking about? He's like, look at these dogs. Like, they're not smart. They're not smart and they look too much the same. And I'm like, wow, that's a crazy observation that inbreeding in animals causes these type of mutations, right? And then going back to aphantasia, or this lack of internal dialogue, and these people that pivot to this dark edge because they've probably been ridiculed for their handicap, while it may not seem, it's not visible. But of course, these people always fuck with each other.
Well, if you want to talk about inbreeding, let me talk about you used to go to Fort Calhoun, and I told you my uncle owned a kennel out there, and he had the best Vizsla. Vizslas are Hungarian hunting dogs. He had the best Vizsla.
Reckless.
Yeah, Reckless. About 4 or 5 states, best Vizsla. But Reckless was inbred, so he could hunt well. So he was specialized. When it come to hunting, he was the best. Everything else, nigga could not do worth a damn. I'll give you an example. Reckless, he was programmed. When you deal with inbreeding of that nature, you're basically making a robot and programming him to do one thing very well, and that was hunt birds. He was
Vizsla is a dog breed from Hungary.
Yeah, it looks like a Weimaraner but red. It's just that's what it's going to look like to you if you know a little bit about dogs. And I'll give you an example when I talk about inbreeding. One time he was out of town doing field trials. So my aunt, which is his wife, she knew like Reckless is the most expensive dog he got, is the most valuable dog he has. So she left all the other dogs outside. It's 105 out. She brought Reckless in the house and put water on him to cool him down because she knew, like, I don't want, nothing. This is our bread and butter. Reckless jumped over the sink, busted through the window, fell 14 feet, and ran back to his cage. He didn't want to be inside the house. That's inbreeding behavior. When you let him out the cage, he starts running in circles, hunting, looking for birds immediately. So we're talking about dogs. We're talking about your inbreeding experience. So what do you do when you're dealing with a person of that nature? Of a person who can't do anything well but kill people. Can't do anything well but fuck people over because that's what he was bred or she was bred to do. Or, like I said, when you see it took you a while, but once you saw it in dogs, you knew what he was saying. Hey, these motherfuckers look all just alike, but they don't function well. They're all howling. They don't do. They have one function, and that was to hunt or whatever the hell they were bred to do, but they can't do anything else. So when you got these you said these non-players on the board, and they're just breeders. They're just here because America's whole financial system is based on slavery and based on your Social Security has value, but you don't.
Right. Okay. So check this out. You brought up an interesting point about breeders. There are people that are just breeders, and all they do is carry genetic code to the next generation.
That's it.
I've come across these people. I did some work for a woman earlier this week, and her children completely destroyed the house. And she had all girls, and the house was full of estrogen. It was completely out of balance. And you can tell the only thing that was needed was for a man to come in there and be like, hey!
Just sit the fuck out.
Because it's something about a man's voice that make kids snap to it. You know what I'm saying? Listen.
I used to disagree with you, but women have told me that, like, you don't understand what I go through. I'm like, get a belt. I said, my mama beat my ass.
I told you, man, like I would do this in the grocery store. And when I told you about it, you thought I was like some rogue, like vigilante and shit. But what I would do is I would see
the traveling drill sergeant.
The traveling drill sergeant. I would see. You know what? That's a good bit right there. But I would see a single mom, and I would see her at her wit's end,
struggling.
And some kid is just wilding out. And I'll walk right up to the kid, and in the middle of his fit, I'd be like, hey! And the little kid would freeze. Like, just a wave went through him. And then I would turn to the mom, wink, and just walk off.
What drives you crazy is that you have women now who don't want to spank their kids. See, my mom wanted to spank me. She was like, look, Give me a reason, motherfucker.
Exactly. I hate your daddy.
I can't stand you. You look just like that nigga. So I think what it is that we've been so drawn into our heads that there's abuse, 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 that any type of discipline is considered to be abuse, and it's not. Anytime you tell somebody they're doing something wrong, that's not abuse. Anytime, I don't like what you said. You said I'm not doing, yeah, because you're not doing right. You're doing wrong, and somebody like what like one of my exes complained about my mom. Man, she keeps telling my daughter she's acting ugly. Like, yeah, because she's acting ugly. She's telling that her behavior is not acceptable. Now,
Hold on.
if you
Back that up. What is she saying?
my mom says you're acting ugly. My mom says not that you are ugly. It's a term she uses. Stop acting ugly. Stop acting bad. That's what my mom is saying. She tells you that behavior is not acceptable, or you can't act that way at
Who is
church.
she saying this to?
At the time, it was my two youngest daughters, and it used to drive their mom crazy. She was like, "Stop telling my child she's acting
But
ugly."
see, here's the thing about your mom though. Your mom is a mental assassin.
She's addressing the issue when it happens.
No,
She's not.
she would put time release aspirins in their brain.
Oh yeah, yeah. Oh,
And
for sure.
and so she knew that she said that, and they would just think about that shit
They
and
have to
think about
they
that
have to
shit
think
and
about it.
think about
They have
that
to think
shit.
about it. Yeah.
Your mom is no joke, dude.
Yeah, they'd freeze up. They stop doing the behavior because they're trying to figure out what the fuck she said. I'm like,
Exactly.
yeah,
It's stopping their tracks because then they got to analyze, and being like
yeah,
small women themselves, they'll just
yeah.
spin their wheels just thinking about that shit.
And so, my ex would used to be like, she says that such a, I'm like, yeah, because she's doing something she's not supposed to do at church. She's doing something she's not supposed to do, and my mom is addressing it immediately. She's not waiting to get home to spank the kid, but the kid ain't thinking about the behavior anymore. They're disassociated from that. Look, so again, my mom that's a self-realizing activity. Do you understand that? That is something that's going to introduce you to your higher self. That's not. I'm sure that's not what you thought when she was complaining about it. But that's what that is. That's a self-realizing. Oh, my actions are good or bad. My actions, yeah, and those are acceptable or not acceptable, and it's being explained to. But you got to put when you're dealing with a child, when you're dealing with somebody of lower intellect who is growing in a different direction, you got to give them the map, the roadmap. You're going to show them like, okay, I need you thinking about your behavior. I think you are introducing that child to consciousness. So what do you do when you don't introduce your child to consciousness and you just feed them and buy them Jordans? What the fuck happens? You create a mindless consumer who doesn't care about where the money comes from or how you provide for
Oh, dude,
it.
you
And,
just said so much right there.
and so now you see that this shit is by design. You're not allowed to discipline your kid. You can't say anything bad to them. You're hurting their psyche, and then you take them to get diagnosed. Oh my God! You know what I'm saying? You created a consumer, and now I'm seeing it right now with somebody. My daughter's best friend. She had a little girl. She doesn't want her. But yeah, but your mom made you this evil entity. I'm gonna put my daughter up for adoption. I said she's playing y'all. She's saying that because she wants y'all to take care of it, and she wants to go off and fucking do what the fuck she wants. That's People do that shit. These little motherfuckers, they learn how to manipulate very early on. So you have to either manipulate them or treat them, or teach them discipline. Excuse me. But if you don't, all you're gonna do is create a consumer, and these motherfuckers will sit there. I can't have this. You're a bad parent, and all of a sudden you feel guilty. Fuck you. My mama never felt guilty. I've been telling these parents, like, hey, your first problem is you eliminate that guilt. What does that mean? As long as you feel guilty, you cannot be an effective parent. Get rid of that shit. We talked about this 2 years ago when we first started doing this podcast. As long as you have that guilt in your mind, you can't be an effective parent because you can't be objective. You can't separate. You know
4 years
what?
ago.
I know. God damn, it's a long time. 4 years ago. Excuse me. And so you literally can't be effective because you can't be objective. And these are the things we're talking about when a person you have to teach your child how to be conscious, and you have to teach your child that they're going to be an adult someday and these behaviors, and you got to question what you're doing and understand, not in a bad way, like, oh my God. No, it's more like, okay, how do I affect others? This voice in my head, telling me to buy cereal. What is that about? Subliminal messaging. So you got to be able, like, you know what? I'm not going to fall for the subliminal messaging. I will make my own decision. I am the listener to the voice. I am not the voice, and I need to think, how does it affect me? Thought.
I went to
Thought is
go
not.
see Equalizer 3 yesterday. Very good movie. Okay. What pisses me off
All
are
right.
the commercials before the trailers. And I purposely turn my head. I don't look. I'll listen to something. I'll put on some headphones, look at my phone while these commercials are on. And I remember when they first started showing commercials in movies. This had to be mid 2000s. And you would always have the Coca-Cola commercial. Every movie theater played a Coca-Cola commercial. That was
Yeah, like with the polar bears and snow
standard,
and
yes.
coke. Yeah, yeah, yeah.
But
I
then you
get you.
start seeing like all these fucking and like what started it actually was the switch from film prints to digital projection. Because
Oh yeah.
then what happened is a lot of these movie theaters started getting these shitty projectors and using those for their commercials, and then they would use the high-end digital barcode projector for the digital films, right? But with that came all these commercials, and I would consciously fight to not pay attention to these commercials because I'm not your captive audience. I'm not the people that you want to beam this message to, whether you think I
Yeah,
am or not. I'm telling
yeah.
you, I'm
You're
not,
not
and I
holding me
don't want to
hostage.
fucking hear this
Yeah,
shit.
I'm a hostage. I'm forced to watch. No, I'm not.
Wow, I brought that up. I'm considering, how does advertising affect a person who cannot form internal dialogue or doesn't have a monologue or can't form visual images in their head? Is a person that has a fantasia or like that, are they easier to control? And
I
my
would think
answer
so
would be
because
yes, because there's no pushback from your base consciousness saying, no, I don't
it's
like that bullshit.
well, hold it. It's not just there's no pushback, that you're a blank canvas. And so when you observe something, you're not thinking about it, you're remembering. Do you dig what I'm saying?
Okay,
So
now
so
watch this.
literally
Now watch this turn. Watch this turn. So then, with a person having a chip inserted into their brain, a computer in their head, you're making the rest of the population like you. If you don't have
oh
the
my God.
ability to
Hold it, hold it,
form
hold it,
the
hold it, hold it.
images.
You just said some deep. So why do you think Elon Musk keeps convincing all these people that they need chips in their heads to perform? Because that's how he is. He can't perform without it. Look, we've had this conversation, so it's really important that you guys listen to what I'm about to say closely. You can make your brain perform better than a computer. You got things. We talked about lion's mane mushrooms. We talked about
Yep,
these different
chaga.
things. Ashwagandha, all that shit will make you more intelligent, more efficient. We talked about
Nootropics.
you talk about you need to fast because your second brain is in your gut. So if your gut is your second brain, then you need to give your gut a break. Fasting for 20 days, give it a break, then take some ashwagandha, take some fucking lion's mane. How about this? The human body is designed for a deficit. So we're you see these athletes, they work out, they train, they hop in an ice bath. But in 1993, a Japanese scientist proves that's the wrong activity. You should take the ice bath before. If you take the ice bath before you work out, you literally build more synapses in your brain. That's why they say taking a cold shower in the morning, you will create new synapses and neurons in your brain.
Mm-hmm.
It makes you smarter. So what that tells you is literally when your brain, when your body is put through extremes of hot and cold, like when you go in that sauna three times a week, you create more testosterone and more human growth hormone. When you sit here, so if you hot, cold extremes, you actually the cold makes your brain better. That's proven. You know what I'm saying? So literally, but also literally, we're told. You see all these athletes in the NFL. Yeah, I take an ice bath after. You're an idiot because you haven't done any research. That you were. That is conditioning. That is somebody sitting there telling you to do this. When the truth is, when you do the research yourself, the ice bath before you work out makes your brain stronger and makes your body better. So the reason I'm bringing this up is because this man's telling you that you need a chip to compete. When truth be told, You need to go back to basics. That Marshall man that we always joke about, that we one of our older podcasts. You need to go back to that because it literally, if you do the research, what makes you smarter, cold showers in the morning. What makes you smarter, ashwagandha. What makes you smarter, lion's mane mushrooms. So you do these activities. They even talk about you talk about tropics, and that's one of the theories. Again, I don't subscribe to that, but that's one of the theories is that these chimps ate these mushrooms and they became humans. That's white folks. That's their story. That's somebody else's story. But what you got to understand is that that's how that based on certain consumption of certain dietary things, you actually make yourself smarter. You actually raise your consciousness. And by raising your consciousness, then you can't be convinced by this goofy motherfucker from South Africa that you need a chip in your brain. In fact, when I was a kid, that's all we talked about was these motherfuckers playing chess with the computer, and the chess master would always beat the computer. So when did these computers all of a sudden become better? What it is that when this internet thing came out, you got motherfuckers like the nigga at Google right now pushing AI. You got motherfuckers telling you that AI is the future. No, baby girl, no, homeboy, you're the future, and your children are the future. So you need to be making your kids more elite, better, changing their diets. If you want to get off meat, great, but just be careful if you're if you go to fruits and vegetables, if you're doing hybrids. You need to do the research. What can you eat to increase your brain activity? That kind of stuff. What increases the blood flow to the brain? Watermelon, that kind of shit. So literally, you can beat any computer by making yourself more efficient. But right now we're more about convenience. We're more about the Kardashians. I want to be famous for being famous. I don't want to have a talent. That shit. So you drone this shit into your kids' heads, show them all this bullshit, telling your kids to call CPS when your parents discipline you. You're basically being betrayed by your own children because all they know is their desire. They don't understand any of this shit. So yeah, you need to be raising these kids and stop feeding them. Stop just blindly, clothing a motherfucker. No, you need to be like, hey, you're going to be the best whatever there is, but it's up to me to put you in that right direction. And yes, if I got to beat your ass, and yes, if I got to tell you you're acting ugly, as my mom put it, sometimes you got to introduce people to consciousness, and that's what we've been taught. That's what we've been lied to about. Like, no, you just teach them about numbers. 2 and 3 is this. No, you're supposed to be teaching your child consciousness and understanding that they're part of a universe and that there's a higher level in God. One of the reasons it's so hard for people to understand the relationship with God and spirituality is because their relationship in the house is fucked up. Like, yeah, if I had a man, I'd feed my kid first. What the fuck? Look, who produces? Who is the provider? It's either the man or the woman. The head of the household is the provider. So the head of the household should be shown grace, should be shown respect. Like, hey, mom, you tired? You're going to eat first. I'll eat later. Because my mom was a provider. But instead, they're like, I couldn't serve no man and all this. Like, look, you literally can't have a relationship with God because your house is corrupt. there are. You learn how to worship properly when you are raised properly. Like, okay, mom and dad are up here, brothers and sisters are here, I'm here, and so on and so forth. And when you have that hierarchy, then you can understand a higher being, that this person made the sun and made all these different things and provided for you. But you can't understand that shit. You're more worried about these like you said, these mindless motherfuckers who took over the world, who made banking more important than people. Man, fuck that shit.
Last year, at the beginning of 2022, there was a news story that was being repeated on many different news outlets. It was about a fork in the road of humanity. When you dig into the source behind the narrative, you will find words like ecological ceiling, sustainable development, bullshit, social foundation, transcendent, human gene editing, ESG, social governance, and artificial intelligence. What I'm hearing when I hear this story is two different things. I hear the front end and the back end. The front end is laced with jokes about that movie, The Time Machine, where it talked about two different races, the Eloi and the Morlocks, and how there's this mole man lower hominid, and then there's these highly advanced humanoids. What they're doing in the back is pushing that out there, when what's behind it is a lot of university professors. Professors that are being funded by the WEF. They're being funded by these think tanks. And then you always have to look and see who's the money by who that's providing the think tanks, who's funding these think tanks. And then when you do, it's like watching a PBS documentary. This show was provided to you by the Rockefeller and the Carnegie Mellons. You know what I'm saying? It's always the same shit. So then, hold on. Let me finish this thought. So then, what it ends up being is a slow march towards neo-feudalism.
We talked about that too. My biggest issue with this is when people love to talk about it's the science. Science goes to who's funding it. These researchers are about who funds them. And if the Ford Foundation is funding them, then they gotta produce what the Ford Foundation wants to hear. So stop saying that it's all about science. No, it's all about funding. And you just discussed that when you talked about these fucking. I used to hate when people, because I went to college, so intellectual this, intellectual that. You're like, hey, what? You stop making fun of intellectuals. No, they're right to make fun of intellectuals, because these intellectuals are about their tenure, about their funding, about who the fuck pays them. And then, of course, after they get paid, then they're impossible to get rid of once they get that tenure at the university. Then they start saying all these obscure Marxist ideas. You do realize that, yeah, communism is better, but how? And so they start pushing the ideas that they didn't have the balls to push before, or whoever funds their research is who they agree with. Like, okay, Kellogg says this. Like, how many? We're finding out that all the shit we were told about cholesterol was all bullshit. That these corn oils and these seed oils are bad for you. They're the ones causing you to have cholesterol. But no, we were told that we can't eat beef tallow, or we can't have grease anymore. And we were told that all this different shit gives you cholesterol, and it's proven that shit does not cause cholesterol now. It doesn't cause the heart issues. It's all the other shit, the fake shit they gave us in its place. So what do you do when you've been lied to like this? You know what I'm saying? Literally, these oils were byproducts from industrial shit. Like, they were leftover byproducts, and we're going to sell them to you as food. And we ate that shit up, and now all of a sudden, people are getting heart stents.
But hold on, people didn't just eat it up. Women put it on their faces.
Oh, my God.
Cosmetics come from... See, this is the crazy part, dude. This is what's so crazy about this, is that while these people are screaming about, you know, ESG and being socially conscious and about the environment and carbon footprint, stop making makeup then. Like, just get rid of makeup.
Here's the truth. The best oil is coconut oil. Coconut oil can make makeup, can make food, can make everything.
Shea butter.
But instead, it's in style to use canola oil. It's in style to use this. Like, you got grapeseed oil, you got olive oil, which is good for you, but you're not supposed to heat it over a certain level. So literally, everything you need is already here. You don't need to be pressing shit and squeezing shit and all this. You already got what you need. But the thing is, you know, the Kardashians don't wear that. Khloe has her own mascara. That's bullshit. Stop falling for that shit. You know what I'm saying? It's a hustle. We have what we need. We have all the beauty stuff. Women in Africa, women in Asia have been beautiful for years just using natural shit. You know what I'm saying? A little bat guano goes a long way, I guess. I don't know what to tell you, but the fact of the matter is this. We're more worried about the labels. We're more worried about the commercials than we are about the product. And that's what when you sit here and say these people are mindless and don't have their own consciousness and they're just blank slates, that means that they're recalling information and not having their own conscious thought. They can't develop their own ideas. This phenomenon, when you're saying that 30 to 40% of people don't have conscious thought, that's some scary shit. Because what do you do when that motherfucker is in charge of a nuke? What do you do when that motherfucker becomes president?
Here's the thing, though. What if certain types of procedures, and I'm not going to say what it is in this setting.
Yep. Was designed to do that. That's some deep shit.
Mm. So really what is happening, is the shift into a new yuga cycle. And consciousness is shifting, and people are being forced on a cosmic level to choose. Now, they're getting in where they fit in because some don't want to ascend. And there are those that want to stay on the same track. So yeah, there's probably a forking going on because we've reached this point in human civilization where the awareness, the information is so paramount. It's so widespread. You can get your hands on all this stuff that everybody is not singing a similar tune anymore. And all these discordant voices.
Well, no, what I'm saying is some people, it's not that they don't want to ascend, it's the fact that many of these people are just struggling to survive. So
No. You missed what I'm saying. When I say don't want to ascend, meaning they don't want to leave their bodies,
yeah.
And so therefore, because they lack faith, they want to keep transferring their consciousness on some altered carbon type shit, and they want to stay in this realm. Now, of course, in a prison system, they're not going to let the prisoners run it. There's going to be a warden, and the warden's going to have people working from the security guards. So, same situation. If you want to stay in this realm, well, Archon's going to control this motherfucker, and you got people that are working for the Archons.
Look, what we're telling you is, train yourself. You are responsible for your own consciousness, and many people. We saw the Matrix. One took the blue pill, one took the red pill. The dude was like, "Hey, I wish I took the red pill," because he would do the responsibility of the consciousness or whatever. But trust me, you need to wake up. You need to. God damn it, I don't want to use woke. You need
consciousness
is your responsibility.
What's crazy is that we were talking about conscious and being conscious back in the day. You know what I'm saying? Exactly. So
conscious brothers.
Exactly, dude. So it's fine. Conscious is fine. Consciousness is fine. Don't let nobody get that out of your head. Listen, there are people out there who are husks of human beings, and they're just a meat machine. They don't have the awareness, the animus that you and I have. But these people click up and they form groups and they got money and they start controlling things. And this is how you get these power struggles. So all we did here today is illustrate who they are and what they can do. Now, you as an enlightened individual, because you're listening to this show, which means that you seek truth, you must then take this information, arm yourself, and act upon it. Acting on how you spend your money, who you spend your time with, and spending time with people that you actually care about. But also,
you got to be electric. You got to be in the mail. You got to actually physically bring it into this world, this realm.
And also,
just think about it.
Spreading truth through conversation with the people that are in your circle. Look, that's all I got. We out. Peace.
Holla back.